Hello, everyone. Today, I want to talk about the importance of feedback and feedback loops. Before we understand why it is important, we also need to understand what feedback is, exactly what it does. From there, I'm going to make the case that feedback is an essential element in the performance of your team, but also in your personal life. So let's talk about why feedback matters. First of all, your career growth depends on effective feedback loops and you listening to feedback as well as sending feedback to other people that you are working with. And the reason because of that is that you might be unaware that you're doing some things that are not as desirable, and then receiving feedback about those behaviors will help you to adjust your behavior. And the other thing is that if there are other things that people in your team are doing that are not desirable, you need to be equipped and be willing to actually give that feedback to them so that they can improve themselves. Higher performing teams are directly tied to effective feedback culture. The more open a team is as a whole to receive and also send feedback, the higher the chance is that they're going to be achieving a very high performance. As part of the feedback culture, what a team develops is an increased trust and collaboration with each other. And that is because the feedback practices that they develop allow them to deliver feedback in a non-confrontational way. And that means that it makes it much easier for people to improve their performance. And through the improvement of the performance, that gives them that satisfaction. And that builds onto the team performance overall, but also fun at work. Another integral element of feedback is that the quality of the deliverable itself, the code and also the way how things are done, will improve in comparison to teams where such feedback is not present and people work only by themselves. Let's talk about Project Aristotle from Google, which they conducted in 2012. In this project, Google wanted to find out what were the main contributors to the performance of a team, because they had some teams that were very high performant and other teams that were not so high performant. And what they surprisingly found was that having people that are very technically capable aren't the best guarantee to make a project successful. What they instead found was that there were four factors that were very important. The first of them was psychological safety. Psychological safety is about feeling safe to speak up about things without the fear of repercussions. So, for example, if someone sees that a particular technical decision is made and they disagree with it, they are okay to raise that disagreement and they don't get ridiculed in the team or, some boss gets angry. So, psychological safety is a key element for a team performance to happen. The other part that they found out was that the people working in a high-performing team, they had a high sense of dependability, meaning that if a team member would say that they would do a particular task, then all the team members can depend on the team member to actually have executed the task, and it doesn't just disappear in the chaos of whatever goes on in a particular day. So dependability means that you can depend on the people inside your team to get stuff done when they commit to it. The other thing is about structure and clarity, and structure and clarity is much more about the team structure, what the roles are, what is being expected from people, and also the role that the team plays inside the organization as a whole. So raising and making an environment in which there is a lot of structure and clarity can help team members become more effective at their job. And then at the very end, that's more of a motivational element. If a team has a high sense of meaning and impact to themselves, that they know that they are making a good impact in the company, it increases their motivation and it gives them a guiding light, like a North Star on what to work towards. And that makes it more easy for the whole team to do all of those other things that I mentioned. Right, so let's talk about control theory and feedback loops for a little bit. I had a lot of fun doing that when I was at university. So in these the importance of a feedback loop and to understand what it does is that it gives you some insight into why feedback itself is important, and actually a critical component of all the work that we do on a daily basis. So in all of these different loops, we would have normally an action, and then if that action is being executed on the environment, which is your project, for example, then what you can expect is that there will be some kind of impact over here. So an action, and in this case, I'm just assuming a random action. We don't actually use a brain in this particular example. It just means that if you execute an action in your environment, something is going to happen. So there's going to be some reaction. But we don't know, and probably, very likely, this impact is not desirable. So we need to get a little bit smarter here. So instead of executing an action over here, what we're going to do is to think about this as a two-step process. We have a particular desired outcome. In control theory, you could call this the set point. And then we have the controller over here. Controller is your brain, and that goes to the environment. So what this is called a particular open loop system. In the open loop system, so an open loop system is something that can work if, as long as you don't have disturbances in your environment. So if the environment is very predictable and you have a particular way of doing things that would lead to a particular result, then re-executing things in exactly the same way will have the same deterministic outcome if the system doesn't have external disturbances. But any project I have worked with has by nature, it's inherently chaotic. Lots of things are changing and being modified at the same time. It's not the team, or if it's not the project, it will be something else, maybe the finance. So that means that if you have learned to do things in a particular way, that you always have to use your brain in order to deal with that. But you cannot use your brain if you don't get new signals from the environment. So what we do is, the first thing is we are going to apply this particular line over here that goes back, simplicity's sake, into the controller. And now what we have done is that we have a feedback signal that will allow us to measure what the outcome is of particular actions on the environment. So we look at the impact of the work, and then we're going to ask ourselves in the controller, in our brain, is this going to lead to a better outcome over time? And that allows us to modify the actions that we're taking over here in the environment that will have an outcome in the increase, hopefully, of the impact. And if there's a decrease in the impact, we have to take additional steps and modify the behavior. So what you apply here in the controller is your brain, right? So that would be your technical knowledge and your skills, and your communication skills, collaborations. From those things, you are going to take actions. You're going to ask a colleague for help. You're going to, maybe code a little bit of code or do things a little bit differently. In the environment, lots of things are going to happen. There will be a certain impact that is generated, and then that is being fed back into your controller that you can use to measure how things go. This feedback needs to be interpreted in a very wide way. It is the feedback that you get from your PR reviews, is the feedback from other people that you receive that will give you hints. There's also feedback from the progress that a particular issue is making as you start to work on it. And all of that feedback needs to be used in your brain, in the controller, to modify your actions to increase the impact. And knowing how to better deal with this, increasing your knowledge and skills is a key factor in the way how your career is growing. So where do we find feedback loops? I think they're present in all of the three particular pillars that we have defined: in technology, in collaboration, but also in the impact dimension. So for the technical dimension, you can think of a code review to be a very good opportunity to receive feedback about how you're dealing with things and what impact that would have on the particular system. And taking that feedback from the pull request and then making that part of your coding skills will avoid making those mistakes in the future. So that is definitely a moment for growth. But anytime that we're doing testing, unit testing or integration testing, That is also a method to get feedback about how those changes and the kind of impact that they make in a particular system, except that it is more automated and it runs probably for every pull request that you have created. So those are some examples of what kind of things you can get in the tech domain. For the collaboration, there's also a lot of different loops that you would have. For example, think about the documentation. When someone documents the knowledge that they have about the system, they are basically sharing their knowledge, and sharing knowledge helps to avoid other people making mistakes or correct like misconceptions that they might have about systems or how things work. And in the collaboration dimension specifically, there's another one which is called the process. The process is a very important element into how people work together and how they can maximize the efficiency and also the effectiveness of working together. All of these both dimensions, they have a particular feedback loop that is short, meaning that you do a little bit of work and then pretty much immediately you're going to get feedback about how that worked out. But in the impact dimension, which is when we talk about business impact, usually it takes a little bit longer to get the feedback that people need. For example, you could consider an A/B test as a way to get feedback about what a particular customer would prefer. And that is, of course, an optimization framework. But that feedback can be used to start to do some more thinking about what would cause these preferences. And then maybe some other elements might also be interesting to change to increase usually the financial impact for a company or the user experience. So the impact dimension have a lot of metrics that can be tracked to understand better the kind of impact that your changes are making, so that you don't make them from a gut feeling. And it's quite interesting to see how feedback is delivered and how this communication works, because of course it is culture dependent and it really depends on who you're talking to, how you're going to achieve a particular outcome. But what I can say is that the companies that I really enjoyed most working in were those where you could say that there was a very high feedback culture. Means that autonomy would be more towards the edges with the individual employees. They would take a lot of the responsibility. And the worst environments that I had to work in were the ones where you had a dominant boss that would tell people what to do and what he wanted to achieve. And usually what I also saw is that that wouldn't lead to the best outcomes because there was lack of information, lack of context being shared. And that means that people are going to be frustrated. They're going to be, working under pressure, very long hours, without the necessary impact that is being committed to and being communicated, usually by the dominant boss himself. Cases where they say, next month I have this system ready and you can count on it. I saw that being extended in a deadline by 7 months even, so that didn't really mean anything. It is much better to be open and transparent in communication because it leads to a better result for everyone, not only in the outcome of the project, but also in terms of psychological health, mental health at work, not having to work under so much pressure, worst cases, leading to burnout. And that is why I think supporting a feedback culture and making people individually responsible for work is always a better way to deal with things and run a company than if you would have a single person who's made responsible for the delivery of a particular project or outcome. So yeah, that's basically it. What I'm going to talk about some other time is to focus much more into how to give that kind of feedback, so that and that's more about probably personal, like on the process level, when you see behaviors that people have or particular approaches to things that you think might not be so optimized. And then we can also dive into concepts related to like to understand that feedback doesn't always have to be confrontational. You can be collaborative in your approach to deliver feedback. For example, hey, I see that this system isn't really handling that particular edge case very well. Let's work on this together so that we can see how we can improve it. That is a very good way of giving feedback while being supportive to other people in the team And by doing things in that particular way, you also increase your networking and the influence that you have of other people, because you know, you're not making fun of people. It doesn't feel as if people are being judged, or you know, as if you have a teacher-student relationship, and that is very helpful to the, let's say, the climate, or the you know, the working environment. So in another week, I'm going to be talking about feedback, and then focusing more on the how you give some proper feedback, because feedback doesn't always have to feel confrontational. A lot of people I talk to, they say that it's not in their place to deliver feedback because they're not a manager, and I think that is completely missing the point, and will also not help to improve the performance of the team. So I think feedback is essential. You need to be able to deliver feedback starting as a junior, going forward, and also to be able to receive feedback in an elegant manner. So I've had some feedback myself as well over the years. One of the ones that I remember most was when we were struggling with interviewing, and I was suggesting to the senior developer, in that case I was the team lead, maybe we should tweak some of these standards. And then one of the things that he said immediately was that you never lower your standards. And that was just a single phrase that he would apply. I started to think about it, and I think that in many cases he is right. And that is also, yeah, what I started to apply after that. Actually changed my behavior in that sense. So the key takeaways here in feedback, and why it is important, is that I think it leads to higher norms and standards for the team. It is making your place a lot more fun to work, less stressful. You don't have micromanagers buzzing around you, and there's much less frustration and a lower possibility of burnout. And then also, I think eventually, when you apply this constantly, it leads to faster delivery of higher quality software.